So I want to address a topic I've seen on the internet. People are implying that Hurricane Milton is being developed and driven by HARP, right? So HARP is a government program. There's a lot of patents associated with it where since the 1930s, and I've written about this where, they could do seed clouding, they can make it rain, in a desert. They can make it flood somewhere. They can steer hurricanes. They can try to dissipate hurricanes. Over decades, the Air Force has had programs for weather modification. So this is an actual thing. I'm not going to go into the details of what HARP is. There's a lot of other details. They use electricity to ionize the troposphere. And they also spray like barium salts and things like that. There's a lot to it, which I'm not going to get into the specifics, but people are looking at the Hurricane Milton, and they see that it is an unusual track. It's an unusual intensity. This time in October, tracking the way it is, and it is set to impact the west coast of Florida. And people are saying, well, this is part of the steal. The establishment is trying to steal the election, which of course they are. Of course they're trying to steal the election. But they're using this to steal the election. So I can't tell you for sure if that is the case. I suppose it's a possibility. You could look at certain types of flights that are going into the storm. Now, there are Air Force flights that do go into the storm, and this is typical. They do go into the storm to measure the intensity. So that is a thing. However, there are other types of flights that you need to watch out for. The other thing is the political impact. If let's say there's a lot of wreckage, there's a lot of chaos, the parasitic system, any type of parasite enjoys cataclysm. They enjoy emergencies because when you have a disaster, that is a room to, as Hegel would, part of the Hegelian dialect, problem, action, solution. So you have a thesis, you have an antithesis, and you have a synthesis. So if you have a disaster, you could sort of push the Overton window. When you have a disaster, there's a lot of chaos. It's harder to keep track of things. When you have quote unquote irregularities, if you have irregularities in the voting, you could say, well, who knows? There's so much disaster around the west coast of Florida, around Hillsborough County, which is Tampa, Orange County, which is Florida, or Orlando. You could say that this disaster is a cover for the fraud that they're going to attempt to do. Same thing in Asheville, North Carolina, right? Asheville is in ruins, and North Carolina is a swing state. Georgia is a swing state, and you can see that there was some damage in Georgia as well. So is it possible that HARP is being used to manipulate the election? Well, that is certainly a possibility. Others have commented saying that this is actually hurting Kamala Harris because of her response. Kamala Harris is like an idiot psychopath, and I suspect that she just hates people. And I think that campaigning is not really her forte, obviously. But, I think the system is relying on fraud anyway. So in a way, it's almost like the system doesn't care. Now, as far as the, Milton being unusual, yes, it's unusual, but it's actually not unheard of. There had been a storm about 150 years ago that did form near Mexico, traveled east, and affected the Tampa area. But this was when Florida was a backwater. Hardly nobody lived in that area at the time. So, yes, it's unusual. It's not impossible, but it is unusual. And, HARP being a factor is something that, maybe you can consider. I'm not saying that it isn't, but I'm also not saying that it is HARP either. So anyway, does this hurt or help Kamala Harris? The system might think that it that it might help, like they might expect that it helps Kamala Harris, but I think that this will actually hurt Kamala Harris. Of course, in a fair election, she wouldn't win anyway, but the whole point is to make the election unfair.